That's right. I don't watch The Office, but my how the turntables.
Yes, that's the line. My, how the turntables.
All right, switch.
Alright. My, how the turntables.
Still taller than me.
Yeah, I know. Anyway. Thanks. I don't know, I whispered that back. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, hello everyone. Coach Abby, Coach Logan. And today we are going to talk about the topic of perfection or perfectionism or...
The unrealistic construct.
Yes.
That game, there's the meme for it. Pop goes perfection. You try to put all the pieces, they're like stars, circles, moons within the time frame, and it's like
stress.
It's inevitably going to blow up in your face.
That's a stressful game.
So perfection. Where's the idea start? Starts with that game. Starts with school. Giving letters. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, O, P, Q, R, S, T, V, W, X, Y, and Z. And the societal pressure to do better. And then your parents give you $5 per A. And you can't get beyond it. And then when you get your first B, your world comes crashing down. And you don't even know what to do with the rest of your life. Who are you as a person? No one. You're no one. Because you got a B.
Or sports.
Yep. I don't remember what subject it was in. This isn't about me. It's a friend I know. Anyways. So.
Sharing stories of friends.
Perfection. How it limits progress. What the fear of failing looks like. How it causes inaction. The revolving premise of shame. How to grow beyond it through self-compassion. And then setting realistic expectations if all else fails. Because you might have just been a little too hopeful. Yeah, just setting proper expectations. So, onward, Abby.
Okay. So this is an area that I've spent a lot of time learning about for myself and also just in general. I really enjoy learning about these things. I spend a lot of my time learning about these kinds of things that people struggle with.
You're a narcissist. Keep going.
Yes. I really love myself. I am perfect. And I will present this information to
this
my
goes on the internet,
viewers.
and I'm going to cut it. So this is just how it's presented.
Okay.
Good.
Great. So the idea of perfection or being perfect at something, or I'm sure many of you watching have struggled with perfectionism at some point in your life. I know I have. I still do to a certain extent, but it's certainly way different than it used to be. And it's, from my understanding and the things that I've learned, is that it's largely shame driven. The language that the way that we talk to ourselves in the background is shame based. If you are interested in learning more about that, definitely recommend Brene Brown. She does amazing work with that kind of stuff, and she researches shame for a living and has written some amazing books. If you go to the gym, we have some in the front. You can definitely borrow them. So the language of shame is not helpful.
Crude.
Yes, it's
paralyzing.
Yes, and it's feeling. I'm trying to remember the way that she defines it, but I mean, of course, there's different definitions of what shame is. But it's kind of just an overall pervasive feeling of thinking you're not good enough at anything, and that it's kind of like, I'm not good at analogies, but it's kind of like a black fog that kind of takes over everything else, trickles its way down into all the other good things that you could be feeling because you should have done better, or you should have been able to do more, or you've accomplished something that you've never done but you should have done better, or you could have done this thing better, or whatever it is. That's shame. That's not actually you. That's the language of the feeling and the emotion.
It's the opposite of a silver lining.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's like a thick black overcast.
Yeah, anything that could be, there's always better. A bad lining.
Right.
That's what shame is.
Right. Yeah.
The most proud you could be of yourself still has oh, but
Mm-hmm.
just like the worst thing that could have happened, but at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So the idea of striving for perfection is unobtainable. Reframe that into something more like just trying to be the best you can be, and defining that more clearly, understanding what that looks like for you, what actually is authentic to you, and things of that nature. My main struggle with perfectionism was probably most commonly expressed when I played tennis. It's very quick feedback every moment, whether you're doing a good enough job or not. If you're getting the result of winning, then you're doing a good enough job. If you miss the shot, you're doing a bad job. If you make the next one, you're doing a good job.
What happens when you serve and you hit the net? What's it called?
A what?
Okay, well, like what is it when you
If
do
it goes in?
No, if you do it twice.
Oh, double fault.
Yo.
So
Sport that says it's your fault.
Yeah, right. So as someone that struggled with perfectionism and then playing tennis, which was highly individualistic at the time, before I went to school, and played in college, but I big shame cloud all the time, pretty much. Completely limited my ability to actually get better at the sport or reach my potential, because I felt like if I wasn't being perfect at it, then I need to be hard on myself to make myself do better, which is a common, super common thought process. And one that I eventually unlearned, and which is great.
It's kind of one of the main premises around binge eating.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I already screwed up something, blah, 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 and then,
Yes.
whole Domino's pizza later, you're like, oh.
Yes.
And then you're like, after that, you're like, why did I do this? And then, speaking from experience.
All or nothing type mentalities.
Black and white.
Yep, black and white, all or nothing.
Perfection or failure.
Right. And I can say for myself that it never actually felt like me. It felt like this, at least looking back on it now, I can understand, I can see the distinction between the two. It just felt like something I had to do to myself to make myself better. To talk to myself in a negative way, to hit myself in the leg with my tennis racket, to outwardly express how disappointed I was in myself to make sure other people knew, and things of that nature. Shame myself to make sure other people knew that I was not happy with myself for not achieving perfection or the result that was desired by me or other people. And that definitely heavily limited my ability to even have success in that sport until I understood the concept of that wasn't necessary, and also self-compassion. So gaining the skill and the ability to teach myself to stop talking that way and then inject it with some kind of self-compassion. Probably at the start it literally was just stopping it, and that was enough. And eventually learning more and more about self-compassion, which is kind of like an antidote to shame. And most people can err on the side of giving themselves too much self-compassion, because I think that most everybody is hard on themselves a lot of the time. So if you're nice to yourself once a day and then you're mean to yourself 10 times a day, you can probably just try to be as nice to yourself as you can all the time.
A good exercise for exercising self-compassion and giving yourself grace as an individual is take yourself out of the situation as if you were talking to a friend. So if a friend was presented with the same situation that you were in, how would you speak to that friend? So like if a friend did really terrible at tennis, in Abby's example, would you be like, you stupid blah blah blah, you did terrible, get out of here, you're ashamed to me? Or would you be like, oh, it's all right, don't worry about it next time, you did really great, you've improved from so and so, so keep it up next time, you'll do even better.
Yeah, or even just ask yourself questions.
Yeah,
like tell me more about that, or I want to understand that more, or anything that gives the shame to the space to kind of dissipate. Is really helpful.
This is where either some type of like meditation or journaling or affirmations, something can allow you to like free your spine, free your mind, give you some centering, be able to get back to where you're at.
Right, and it definitely is the kind of thing that it takes a lot of work in the beginning. Of course, depending on how prevalent shame is in your regular language to yourself, but it definitely takes a concentrated effort to be compassionate to yourself, and you have to practice it. It's a practice, and then as you get better at practicing compassion towards yourself, it becomes easier to practice compassion towards other people and allow them to be in their imperfect states as well. So it's much easier to accept people if you can, accept where you're at.
Right on.
So other things that kind of come from perfectionism or expecting yourself to be perfect are either fear of failing or inaction or both. So, examples of fear of failing. There's a level of vulnerability required in going after something that you want to do, and that's scary, and shame doesn't like vulnerability as well. So the more you open yourself up to being able to do something new, the more likely it is that you're gonna fail, or not even necessarily more likely that it is you're gonna fail, but the more vulnerable it requires you to be. So the more that shame voice speaks up and says, but what if you don't do it? Or, but what if you don't do it good enough? Or, but what if you should have, picked a different thing? Or, anything like that. Any, more negative voice that's going to try to get you to not move into that discomfort and vulnerability towards combating perfection. Shame is going to try really hard to not let you do that because it likes where it's at. So, and it doesn't like when you're vulnerable.
It's cozy.
And do new things.
It's cozy.
So,
sure.
And trying to do anything new is a vulnerable experience for anyone.
Because you might feel like you're going to fail, so you don't do it.
Yep.
Because shame doesn't allow you to.
Yep. Imposter syndrome kind of falls in this category as well.
A little bit.
In some ways. But yeah, so if you're expecting yourself to do something perfectly for the first time you ever do it, the likelihood that you
that's unrealistic.
Don't take action on it increases. So there's tiny little realistic steps that you can take towards something that you want to do, that you can get there and feel as uncomfortable and as vulnerable as you feels right for you, but is still realistic. So, and still keeps you moving forward. So, yeah. So self-compassion and baby steps and realistic expectations.
Yeah, realistic expectations is just really assessing what it is you're trying to accomplish, the task you're trying to do. And then that allows for the shame voice to not be as loud and as pronounced. Like,
yeah. And it will literally try. You'll hear it.
Yeah. So so the shame usually comes from something from your past. It's some type of like association. It could be someone you know. It could have been a school. It could have been a group of people. It could be a societal pressure.
You heard.
It could just be this unrealistic. It could be like modern day. It could be something on social media that you feel like there's an expectation you have to live up to. So it just could be polluting your brain with these unrealistic expectations of something you should be trying to achieve when all you have to do is look inward, kind of discover who you are a little bit, get a little bit of reflection, give yourself a little bit of self-compassion and grace to understand you're not going to do it perfectly. You are probably going to fail, which is fine because it's an opportunity to learn for yourself. Accomplishing a task for any individual is very minutia. There's a lot of minutia and nicheness to each person. So you're not going to know what you don't know unless you do it. So being able to be okay with failing, letting that action take place. Shame's going to be there. You just tell it to shut up. And then you go grow beyond that with a little bit of grace, self-compassion, and more practice. It takes tons and tons of practice. Just like within fitness, just within lifting, just within trying to accomplish a new habit, a new task, you have to practice. And the more you do it, the better you get. But setting realistic expectations, starting really slow, starting really low. Like if you have a fear of asking for help, or you don't know how to establish good boundaries with people because you feel like there's someone in your head that's going to tell you you're a terrible person if you ask for help, start really slow, start with something that you feel comfortable asking for help, and let that new habit, new practice become something that can grow from this realistic expectation. See, that'll change through time. So what could be deemed unrealistic one day, as you get better at it, more practice with it, can come completely realistic the next.
Yes.
Shtumboo-bum.
Yes.
Look
That's
at the
okay.
words. Yep.
Yeah, that was a good point about the
See,
shame
giving
thing.
myself grace
Yeah.
for stumbling around.
Yeah, no baby is born with shame, so it's learned,
Oh,
which means you can unlearn it.
the first time a parent says, "No, don't do that,"
Mm-hmm.
shame.
Mm-hmm.
Immediate.
Yep.
Mm.
It's pretty interesting,
It's a tough
but
one.
I mean, babies aren't born with that, so it's from all around us. It's like pretty pervasive, kind of literally everywhere. So just something to be aware of and notice when you're doing it. That's also a great place to start.
Mhm.
That's a realistic place to start, is just to pay attention to
God, tall.
how you talk to yourself. Wow, you're so tall.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, so hopefully,
Actionable items moving forward.
Yeah.
You want to summation it?
sure.
So I'll guide you through this
Okay.
as a team together. Okay. So what does the idea of perfection limit you to do?
Essentially, it limits your ability to reach your potential in anything that you want to do.
And why does the fear of failing get in the way so much?
Because perfectionism is a safeguard for feeling vulnerable, and doing things inherently means you could fail at them, which makes you feel more vulnerable, which puts the defense of, but if I can't do it perfectly, then I'm not going to do it.
And what's the role of shame in that?
Shame is the creator of perfectionism and the idea of perfection.
Mhm.
And it's the cycle that our brains and bodies keep us in to keep us safe from that vulnerability and discomfort of venturing into something new or having a new experience, or it could be meeting a new person, it could be trying a new sport, it could be going to a gym for the first time, it could be I don't know, and opening a business, it could be playing a sport.
Right.
So many different things.
Moving
All of
to
it
Pittsburgh,
requires vulnerability.
randomly
Yes,
from Texas.
there you go.
So
Putting yourself out there.
how do you get beyond this inaction?
How do you get beyond the inaction?
Mhm.
Well, I would say you have to start by noticing the way that you talk about and to yourself. So trying to put yourself in that other perspective of being your own friend and noticing how you're talking to yourself, because if you don't have the awareness of the way that those conversations are going inside your own mind, then you're never going to change it. So it starts by building the awareness of the shame language, starting to understand where it could come from for you, and different ways that it crops up, because it can crop up basically at any time. But so can joy, and so can happiness, and every other feeling. So sadness,
And then
just emotions.
obviously realistic
Anyway.
expectations, and then the big role that self-compassion plays in growing beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after you kind of start noticing that language, and maybe start telling yourself to stop talking to yourself that way, or that's what worked for me. When I really would notice it, I would literally say stop out loud, and then I would take a second, and then I would carry on from that and forget about it, kind of. And eventually I learned so much more about it and all those kinds of things. But the role of self-compassion is to kind of quiet that voice and allow you to step into new things and allow you to be vulnerable. You have to be nice to yourself to be vulnerable to take on new challenges. And then that self-compassion will actually help you be able to take more action and feel less afraid of failing, or feel more accepting of the idea of failing, without, I won't go there. and allow you to progress in new ways that you wouldn't have been able to otherwise, if you continue to have the same narrative about how you should do things or whatever it is.
Right.
So, and then go ahead.
That was it. The
Okay.
realistic expectations was just more of like an overarching theme of the thing, but that was more
Okay.
chronological.
Yeah.
So I can give a summation, I think,
Sure.
of that. So if self-compassion was the silver lining, saying you did the best, this is what was good out of this.
Mm-hmm.
The shame is the dark, druid, blah monster
Yeah.
that
Okay,
says you're
you're not
terrible at
watching
everything
now.
you've done, even if you achieved greatness.
Yes.
So
Should have done better.
you'll notice that a lot of the most successful people are full of shame. It's because they never are good enough, so they have to keep
Yeah.
doing more.
Athletes.
It's rough,
Mm-hmm.
tough stuff. But all right,
Mm-hmm. But you can also be successful and not have that. It's not a requirement. It's just a
it's a symptom.
yes.
Gross.
Yes. Yeah. So there's a couple great books about how to practice self-compassion.
We'll link them in the description below.
All right. Have a great time with thinking about all your thoughts.
Let us know if you have any questions.
Yeah. All
And
right.
if you have a better analogy for self-compassion.
Yeah.
Like, comment, all that YouTube
Okay.
stuff if you made it to 20-something minutes. Whatever it is.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.